Hello, I'm Cleo Franklin. I'm the founder and CEO of Morningside College's Franklin Leadership Foundation and global consulting business, Franklin Strategic Solutions. I'm also the proud author of a new book just released called Coffee with Cleo. But folks, I'm not here to talk about me. I'm here today to introduce an exciting new partnership with Morningside College. It's called the Franklin Leadership Professional Development Series. This series is really developed with you in mind. As we deal with the challenges of COVID-19 that has brought about a lot of uncertainty, fear, and doubt, we feel that with chaos comes opportunity. And this initiative is that opportunity to share with you by introducing and bringing to you virtually the best minds across the globe to talk to you about issues, challenges, topics that you're concerned with. What do I do when it comes to pursuing a career? How do I professionally network? What are the tips and tricks to be successful in my life? I hope that you'll find this series and this platform of engagement with business professionals will be enlightening for you to help you not only rise, but soar to the next level. Thank you so much. And on behalf of Morningside, as well as those involved with the Franklin Leadership Foundation, we welcome this opportunity to engage with you. All the best.
This is just the most current topic that you could be talking about right now, right? Everything is COVID-19 all the time, and networking has something that still is very, very important. So very much looking forward to this presentation today. Before we get started, I do just want to introduce Cleo Franklin really quickly. Cleo is sort of the mastermind behind these webinars that we've been doing. So he was integral in coming up with the topics and finding the speakers, and is just really keyed into to helping our students and alumni from that perspective. So just a brief introduction of Cleo. Cleo Franklin graduated from Morningside College in 1981 and currently serves on the Morningside College Board of Directors. He is passionate about providing opportunities and resources to inspire and support the next generation of leaders. He is the founder of the Morningside College Franklin Leadership Foundation, author of the leadership book Coffee with Cleo, and the founder, president, and CEO of Franklin Strategic Solutions, a global consultant and leadership development business specializing in global strategic planning, marketing, business development, organizational development, brand strategy, executive coaching, and keynote speaking for all industries. And with that, I'm going to ask Cleo if he will hop on here really quick and introduce our speakers for us.
Good afternoon, Stacy. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
All right. I want to welcome everybody for a fantastic session. And we're very excited to have two of my colleagues that I've known for a while that I think are going to not just delight you, but provide you with a lot of good insight on a topic that anyone can benefit from. And just a few things. There's power in networking, and I just really want to give you a few quotes. The richest people in the world look for and build networks. Everyone else looks for work. I think that's a very, very powerful quote, because the next quote I really want you to really understand is going to really set the scene and set the table for what we're trying to do and what we're trying to accomplish today. And this is from Zig Ziglar. Zig Ziglar says you can have everything in life you want if you would just have enough help from other people get you what you're looking for. Today, you're going to speak with, of course, Kari Spaan and Aaron Alejandro. They're going to introduce themselves again. These professionals really understand the power of networking, and the message that they're going to deliver today will resonate not just today, but tomorrow, whether there is a pandemic or not, because it is so important to network. With no further ado, I'd like to introduce both Kari and Aaron, and I'll tell you a little bit about themselves. And thank you, everybody, for joining us.
Very good. Kari, why don't you go ahead and give us an overview first, and then I'll do that and jump right into our presentation.
Very good. Well, again, my name is Kari Spaan. I'm currently the founder and CEO of IYOTAH Solutions. I live in Colorado, Grew up in the Midwest, however, with a love for animal science, agriculture, and have stayed in that industry for most of my life. I went to South Dakota State where I got an animal science degree and pre-vet. I decided not to go on to vet school, but found out I was pretty good at marketing and sales. I had an entrepreneur hidden inside of me, so I started a business early on in my life. It was called Midwest Sonotech, where I took technology from Iowa State and was the first to take it commercially out to the industry in the beef, cattle, and swine industry. It was exciting times, and I'll tell you a little bit about that in our presentation. But have been in the past vice president of go-to-market strategies and business development for a company called Beck Ag, and then was chief opportunity officer at another ag tech company prior to me starting the current company IYOTAH Solutions. So look forward to talking to you all and having a good time for the next hour.
Very good. Thanks, Kari. It is an honor to present with Kari. Just real quick, a little bit about me, then we'll jump into the presentation. My name is Alejandro, and I can tell you that my entire life, I've realized that I needed somebody else. My life started pretty rough in Dallas, Texas. I'm the product of a broken home. My father passed away when I was 10. I got into a lot of trouble, and I got sent to a boys' ranch. And at that boys' ranch, I was introduced to an organization called FFA. And in the FFA, I found a little bit larger network and some people that actually believed in me and said there might be some opportunity. And as a result, I took advantage of those, became the first person in my family to go to college and went to Texas Tech University on 5 scholarships, went on to work for a member of the United States Congress. I then worked in a boot camp with truant offenders and in a prison before I found the job that I'm in now, where I have been the executive director of the Texas FFA Foundation for the past 20 years. I absolutely love my job. I get to work with some of the greatest young people in the country, some of the best teachers in the country, and some of the most outstanding sponsors as well. So with that, I'm a firm believer in networking. If I hadn't had it, I doubt that we would be visiting here today. So with that, we're going to get started. Networking in a pandemic and a COVID-19 world. Kari, go ahead. Kari she's in charge of our slide deck here. No matter where I go in the United States and no matter what organizations that I have the pleasure to visit with, I always share this quote from Abraham Lincoln. And I really think it's important that we all evaluate the quote and we kind of assimilate it, let it sink in for a minute. The philosophy of the schoolroom in one generation will be the philosophy of government in the next. Let that sink in for a second. The philosophy here will be how we're governed later. The bottom line is if we're not willing to compete for the attention of those who will follow in our footsteps, somebody will. So I think it's an honor that Cleo Franklin had the vision and works with Morningside to provide these opportunities, these empowering leadership opportunities, because it is about the future. It's about y'all. It's about everyone that's on this phone. And I know Kari's got family. I do too. I've got a grandson. Trust me, I'm hoping that maybe one of y'all one day will be Liam's mentor or his doctor or his lawyer or his elected official. I firmly believe that what we do today affects tomorrow. Next slide, Kari. What is this thing we call networking? Well, I'm going to share a couple here with you. Number one, life is not a solo project. We were not created to be the Lone Ranger. I believe that none of us is as strong as all of us. I believe there's intellectual power in numbers, support power in numbers, physical power in numbers. So I'm a firm believer that networking can lead to a lot of opportunities. As you think about the word networking, would you do me a favor? Whether you're on camera or not, would you just smile? And the reason I say it's important to smile, I don't know if y'all read the research on it or not, but if you smile, it's a proven fact that you're 99% more intelligent than the person sitting next to you. So if you'll just look around, you'll find out real quick you're a genius. But a smile is a great way to begin this process of networking. The action or process of interacting with others to exchange information, and develop professional and social contacts. Next slide. So what Kari and I would like to visit and share today, and by no means are these all the answers, it's just kind of our perspective and some of our experiences on where we're at right now. Networking. So when we think about networking, let's talk about concepts, application, results, and then we'll do a little bit of Q&A. If there was an acronym that I would have you write down right now, I would have you write down R squared A squared. So R squared A squared, and what that stands for is recognize, relate, assimilate, and apply. So recognize the concepts, relate those concepts, assimilate those concepts, take them in, make them part of oneself, and then apply them. And I think what you'll find is that you will be on the path to skill development. Next slide. Kari, is this, I can't see the slide numbers. Am I on 4 here?
You're on 5.
This is 5. Okay, here we go. So Kari and I visited about this topic of networking, and here's what we both come to the conclusion of. Whether we're in a pandemic, COVID-19 or not, networking is networking. That sounds like a Yogi Berra quote, but networking is networking, and it doesn't matter what the environment. The bottom line, again, life is not a solo project. There's strength in numbers. So it behooves us to look around. One of my early mentors told me this. He said, Aaron, always have 10 friends older than you and always have 10 friends younger than you. The 10 friends older are going to tell you where we've been. The 10 friends younger are going to tell you where we're headed. So as we look through this list of some topics here that relate to networking, you're going to hear Kari is so inspiring. When y'all hear her accomplishments and the way she's applied these things, it is inspiring. Networking is about relationships. Relationships take work. It's about listening. And you've got to learn not only to listen, to be an active listener. You're going to have to hustle. You're going to have to be intentional about this. You're going to have to use technology. We'll talk a little bit about this, using technology to work smarter instead of harder. Utilize the reach of social media and these various platforms to build your network. Remember, be consistent. Consistency creates credibility. And the one that I always share with people is that everything that we do and everything that we put out there to the public, that is us living our brand. So I strongly encourage you, when you go to a company, when you work for any organization, you live your own brand, but you also live your brand within that organization. And with that, I'm going to turn this over and let Kari start kind of taking us down the next path.
Sounds great. Thanks, Aaron. I want to just add a couple things to this slide as we think about us in our COVID-19 environment right now. How would I change the way that I'm networking instead of how I traditionally would have networked? And again, right now, relationships are so important, aren't they? I mean, we need to reach out to people and let them know that we care. And so right now is a great time to reach out to people you haven't talked to in a while and just check in and see how they're doing and just create some of that warm connection again. Maybe you haven't talked to them for 10 years. It's a good time to just get through your current network and just build some relationships and make sure everybody that you know or have known in the past is doing good. It's also a good time to, as you have some of these conversations or start new ones, to practice your listening skills and build that communication skill, asking questions the right way and really actively listening. I read a book in my early stages in life that was recommended to me by a mentor called Listening for Success by Steve Shapiro. I would recommend it highly. Changed my life, changed the way that I was able to build networks and build those skill sets, and really pay attention to your active questioning and listening as you reach out to these different people. I also learned early in life that in order to build a network, you have to be very intentional about it. In the beginning, when I was starting business, I made a goal of reaching out to 50 people a week with the goal to have 10 new relationships built by the end of the month. Strong relationships, not just, light ones where you've said hi and introduced yourself, but actually relationships that you've been able to establish a connection. I believe that strategy helped to launch me into a successful journey that I'm still on. And I continue to build those same kind of strategies for myself, depending on where I'm at in my career. And I think it's really important that you work at that. It's something that doesn't happen naturally. It's something you have to set aside time in your day. And again, applying the consistency, that Aaron mentioned, you have to be consistent about this and do things that enable you to make that a habit. We also have technology listed here, but I'm a technology gal. I'm also in software right now. I'm doing ag technology as a business, but I still believe strongly that picking up the phone is still your best vehicle for building a network. And I encourage you to do that. And a lot of people, I have kids that are 25 and 26, 22 and 19, and they all want to they said they had a conversation, and I said, did you talk to the person? And they said, no, I was texting them. I said, well, that's not a conversation. So make sure you have conversations with people and get to know them. That's really what's going to help you build your network. So let's get into some of the skills. Why does networking matter? As you know, it opens up doors that maybe wouldn't have been opened up before if you didn't meet a certain person. Improves your communication skills, like we just talked about. Expands your knowledge base. You can't know everything, but putting a group together that knows everything is definitely possible. And as Cleo mentioned, you need a group to be successful. You cannot achieve success on your own. It's definitely a group. Having a great network allows you to build a reputation as well, whether you want to be a leader in your profession or just not necessarily a thought leader, but somebody in your reputation, in your career path. Being known and having that strong network sure enables lots of things to happen. And when you have challenges, you have a group of people to reach out to. So the tips here are to, reach out, use a 3-foot rule when you're not in a COVID mask. Or if you're in a COVID mask, use a 6-foot, or if you're not in a COVID mask, use the 6-foot rule. I meant to say it the other way around. I know, Aaron, you have something to share on the Google alerts. It's something that you actively do.
Yeah, actually, I'm gonna come back to the 3-foot rule real quick. We use the 3-foot rule, and we always tell young people, get to know people that are within 3 feet of you, because eventually they're going to be your customers, your clients, your colleagues, your constituency. It's going to be somebody that you're going to have to connect with. So take the time. And by the way, one of the things that I think Kari and I would both tell you, you've got to be brave to network. You've got to be courageous. You're going to be a little bit vulnerable to put yourself out there to have a dialogue with somebody, but I would encourage you to do it. The 3-foot rule, here's where it came from. I was doing a consulting workshop with a company out of Sweden. The CEO and president, we took a break. This was before cell phones. There was a phone bank. Everybody was standing in line to use the phone. The CEO decided, hey, I think I'll practice the 3-foot rule. He turned around to the gentleman behind him, introduced himself. The gentleman behind him was a large farmer and rancher. He asked him what he did. He said, I put in control units. He said, tell me about it. He said, well, I've got something on my ranch that I'm looking at doing. Could you do that? He said, yes. He came back after break. He pointed to me. He told everybody, listen to what he just said. I just made a $350,000 sale using the 3-foot rule. It works. You never know. Google alerts. I'm a big fan, again, of working smarter instead of harder. Google alerts. I've got every one of my board members, every sponsor that we deal with, and topics of interest to me all set up on Google alerts. Put them in parentheses, and every day Google will send you an alert if your topic, your members, your sponsors have been in the news. Just the other day, I received an alert on a company here in Texas called McCoy's. It's a large building supply, sort of like Tractor Supply. The COO and president, Megan McCoy Jones, was in the news. I got the alert. I copied the link. I sent it to her. I said, good job. Keep up the good work. You're doing great. She sent me an email, a very nice email. She says, Aaron, thank you for always paying attention to our brand. It makes us feel good to know that y'all are looking after us. That is relationship building. You got some others here, so I'm going to let Kari jump in here because we've got some other topics and some other tips here. So Kari, take it away.
So I think strategic planning would be next, and definitely something that I follow to create a strong, successful path in the careers that I've chosen. Uh, if you are going into a specific industry, really study that industry. What companies, if you're looking for a job, what companies do you want to work for? You want to study those companies, you want to study the people in those companies, know what they're talking about, really understand what the CEO's goals are, what the vice president's goals are, what could be your potential boss. Find out what that person likes and is following and saying about the industry. Those are great ways to really build a strategic plan. And then again, I can't reinforce it enough. You have to practice, 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 and be consistent about creating those relationships. It doesn't happen with one email. It doesn't usually happen with a text message. It may not even happen with a phone call, but it may happen if you text message, email, and call those type of people, not in a creepy way as we have listed here. However, if you are listening and following these people, these companies, you have specific things to point out and talk about that that is of interest to them, and you can bring that up in all of the communication styles that you choose. So again, these tips are great. Make the sum greater than you is really the trend here. You can't do it on your own. The network is so powerful and important. Anything else to add, Aaron, on this slide?
No, I would say, when we talk about make it personal but not creepy, there are times that, just in the very short time that I've got to know Kari, there are, you can tell that family is really important. When I talk to Cleo, sometimes Cleo will ask me, well, how's my family doing? I'm going to tell you, it's always nice when you start your dialogues off where we're not just talking about work. We're talking about some of the things that we all value, and that's our family. So that's what we mean when we say make it personal, but not creepy. And the other thing is whether we're talking about professional networking or any other topic that you want to be seen as credible in, you've got to put the effort in to become a subject matter expert. I've been told that you need to spend anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes a day on topics in research and in study of those things that you want to become an expert in. And by doing so, you're aggregating information that will make you more valuable to the overall team. Thanks, Kari.
Perfect. So again, Aaron talked about McCoy's. I don't know if you have more to add here, but we really do think that applying what we're talking about really does work. When he talked about Google alerts and relating to something that was mentioned when they were in the news, it really does make a difference. I go back to when I was in college, and I realized right away how important it was to build a network, and I started joining clubs. I started joining organizations like fraternities. I was in a fraternity, yes, but I was a supportive member of a fraternity that was in my career path. And those relationships that I built throughout those clubs and those organizations really proved to be of strong value to me early on in my life, and continue to be, as I'll share here a couple times. My first business that I owned, with the ultrasound business that I mentioned, was built because of my network that I had and my relationships that I built while I was in college. So I decided to do that business, and then I reached out to my network to help me create the relationships I needed to build my first customers. Then those first customers, I used my networking skills to be able to take their relationships that I had built, trusting relationships with them, onto the relationships of theirs, and use their network to continue to build a really strong and successful business that I was able to sell in the marketplace. And it still exists today because it had such a strong foundation. So I truly believe that that's from the beginning, I saw that importance of building a network. I can also attribute a network philosophy to my ability to get a job at Beck Ag. I was looking for something different in my life. Beck Ag was not a company I knew about, but a friend of mine from college knew what my skill set was like, and she recommended that I talk to the Beck Ag president and CEO. I got hired at a lower level job, and was kind of doing networking for them, helping them to build their network as a skill. And then what happened is I was able to see that I could do a lot more for them. And I started reaching out to bigger businesses using my skill set to build their network, and got hired to move up higher to business development lead. And then from there, I quickly moved on and was handling millions of dollars of business, and moved on to a vice president of go-to-market strategy and business development for them, where I was for 10 years. So I was able to use my network marketing, my networking skills to build a strong business for them and build skill sets that have built relationships that are long lasting for myself as well. Any to share that you have, Aaron, right now? Any other
No,
stories?
I can tell you, I get inspired when I listen to Kari's story, because every success that she articulates was not by accident. It was very intentional, and she worked at those things, and as a result, the results they're obvious. One of the things that I've not shared a lot, I don't share this a lot, but I think it's an example of what we're talking about, is I've never applied for a job. Every job that I have had has been a result of the strong network that was created. And so when those opportunities presented themselves, they said, well, let's ask Aaron about that, or let's check, see if he's available. So I would just share with you that you never know who's watching and who's in your networks. So by creating strong networks, you never know what strong opportunity you may be creating, the ones that I've had and the ones that you just heard from Kari.
Yeah, I would, say the same thing, Aaron. I have never had to apply for a job. I had to go in and present myself, and share my skill set with people, but it was because of a recommendation. And I didn't have to go through some of those hard tasks that others might because of my network. I want to make sure we point out here that the third bullet on the right on results, where we're talking about helping others get what they want, is going to make major changes in your life. Believe me, it's a major place to focus. If you focus on helping others get what they want, you will always get what you want, and probably way more than you ever could have thought about and envisioned. And I just the other day, a friend that I built in college in one of those organizations that I mentioned earlier reached out to me. We hadn't talked for 10 years. We didn't know much about each other, but we knew each other really well a long time ago. And he reached out, was in a new business, and he was wondering if my new business might be a good fit. But in the end, what ended up happening is I ended up helping him with my network and facilitating new business for him through my network. And it was very exciting to me to be able to do that and recommend others to work with a friend of mine. So there's great ways, again, helping others get what they want. Lots of things good will happen to you. So take it away, Aaron.
Here's another fun slide that I like to throw out to groups and organizations. And I can't see everybody, so we're just going to have to be trusting each other that we're giving thumbs up or thumbs down in this virtual world that we find ourselves. But when you think of this topic of people don't change, I want to ask you, do you agree or disagree with that statement? People don't change. I'm going to give you just a second here. I don't want to spend a lot of time. I see disagree. I see disagree. Okay, y'all are doing good. All right, I got to tell you the truth. It's a trick question. People have never changed. And if you read history, you'll understand people are always the same. The same things that motivate you motivate me. Whether it be a good book, a good movie, a good song, a good story, family, friends, people don't change. Go back and look in the 20s and 30s, there were pessimists and optimists. There's probably people that think America's going to hell in a handbasket today, and there's probably somebody thinking that the greatest opportunities are ahead. People don't change. Individuals can change. Individuals change all the time. But as people, we got to recognize that the same things that motivate you motivate me. We got to learn to capitalize on those. Technology is a tool, but there are some people that say technology is making us antisocial. Just look at all those faces, their heads buried in those mobile devices. Well, is this really new ground? Let's look at the next slide. Maybe not. I bet when the newspaper came out, somebody said, well, that's it. Everything's falling apart. Everybody's got their head buried in a newspaper. Nobody's talking anymore. No, these are just technology. They're just tools. They're ways to communicate. Some people saw it as an opportunity. Other people, here's the thing, change. Think of change like this. It's like a giant millstone rolling down a hill. Now you can stand in front of it and yell stop, but you're going to get squished. What you want to do is get on one side or the other and try to keep that thing moving in the right direction. So this is really not new grounds. By the way, they were taking selfies back in the day too. You just kind of had to be real still.
That camera's awesome.
You couldn't blink. You had to let the shutter do its job. And then if you look at where we're at today, we're still taking selfies. It just looks a little bit different. But the reality is we can use technology as a tool to stay involved. One of the things that I like to share is that the reality of the world that we live in, when we talk about people don't change, and we look around and we talk about those older than us and younger than us, if you'll look at the entire world global population, 50% of the population is under the age of 30. Now, the reason that's important to evaluate that, especially when you're developing your networks, is there are in our own personal networks, we all have these three types of people. We've got early adopters, late adopters, and forced adopters. Well, who would be an early adopter? Well, that would be the young people. They adopt the technology very, very quickly. They look for trends. What's the coolest new thing? There's late adopters. Well, they get to the party a little bit late. My analog phone's not working. I think I need to go ahead and change over to a digital. And then there's forced adopters. I don't know where everybody's at right now throughout the country, but I can tell you this. Down here in the state of Texas, we have these things called red boxes that have DVD movies in them. True story, I had a friend come up to me and ask me, Aaron, I've heard that there are these red boxes where I can rent a movie. Do you know if any of them have any VHS tapes? That would be an example of a forced adopter. Okay, 50% of the world's population is under the age of 30. What that tells you is that the way that you message and the way that you network, you need to be aware of that so that you can compete for their attention and bring them in to the task, the organizations, and the opportunities that you're trying to create.
It's perfect. I love all of these scenarios that you've just played out. It makes you just really think, right? That I make fun of my kids and their phones, but it probably isn't a changed behavior. It's just a changed technology, right? That's all there is. I'd like to just point out, that why compete? Every single step that I've taken pretty much is in a competitive mode. I've been competitive most of my life. I ran track for South Dakota State. I have a pretty competitive spirit and intentional, movement to reach my goals. And so everything that I've done in my life has been pretty strategic for the most part, not all of it, but most of it has. And so when you talk about why compete, I'll tell you a story that applies to this in my life right now, because I just started this new business last August. So it's a big step. It's got big potential, but lots of competitors in the space and the animal protein supply chain of agriculture right now. And that's where my ag tech company lies. And I went to a conference last January in San Francisco where a lot of the new ag tech players were there. And the companies that are the big leaders in that domain were all there. The CEOs were there, vice presidents were on panels, all sorts of decision makers in that industry were up in front in a panel discussion type atmosphere or situation environment. And so I made the decision that it was important for me to network at this event and get to know every single one of those decision makers, or certain ones, which was a lot of them. And I made a strategic plan to make that all happen. I studied all the companies. I studied their background. I studied who knew what and what they were focusing on. And then I went to the conference And I went to every single one of the panel discussions and took just serious notes. And from those notes, I then went out to the networking times where there were breaks, coffees, and social hours. And I was able to go up to each of those different decision makers and have a pertinent conversation based on what they had just said up in front of a bunch of people, or what they had said in their corporate notes and their advertising and in the media, and was able to drum up a very quick relationship with them that led to all of the relationships that are building my business today. And it's growing very quickly and fastly because of this a year ago that I did this network marketing type of conversations at these events. So I just can't, iterate enough how important networking is in your business and in your life to build strong relationships. And the last thing before I move to the next slide is a Zig Ziglar quote that says that he talks about, and I've met Zig Ziglar, met him. He was an amazing person. He said, remember, there's plenty of room at the top, but not enough to sit down. So it takes action. It takes action. And
No,
again,
I'd love to drop it off for a little bit, but
Zig Ziglar is, also
Yeah.
known for building trusting relationships. So he is quoted here too. If people like you, they'll listen to you. But if they trust you, they'll do business with you. And this is proven over and over again. If you can really listen to some of the things we talked about, ask questions and listen, and build those trusting relationships, you will have the network that will take you far, far down the road. Go ahead, Aaron.
Something in there. I want to throw something in there on that competition thing when you talked about compete. To all of the people that are on this call that are participating, I want to tell you thank you, because I share with high school students and college students all the time. Right here within the state of Texas, there's over 1,100 school districts. That means there's several more high schools than that. So we're talking about thousands of high schools. How many colleges and universities are in the United States? Every year, high school seniors are graduating and college students are looking for opportunity. The question that I always challenge people with is, what is your competitive edge? What separates you from your peer? When that job opens up, to the young people, it could be something as simple as a question is asked. One of them says, yeah, the other one says, yes, sir. They're both qualified, but one of them now has a competitive edge. Professional networks provide you a very critical competitive edge. Fortune 500 CEOs were asked this question. If you were going to promote somebody within your company on 3 criteria, here are the criteria: performance, attitude, and networking. Performance, attitude, and networking. You're going to promote them on those 3 criteria. How do you rank them? And almost every presentation when we have this discussion, some people will say it's attitude, some will say it's performance, but very few will ever say it's networking. But according to Fortune 500 CEOs, they rank networking number 1 at 60%, attitude at 30%, and performance at 10%. The performance must be there because they're already considering you for the promotion. What they're looking for is somebody with a strong network that can, 1, solve problems quickly, and 2, help them capitalize as quickly as possible. Just another example of how you can have a competitive edge. Now we're going to look at the legacy by design or by default.
Aaron, I would add to that on that comment you just made, that in order to have a strong network, you have to be a high performer and you have to have a good attitude. It doesn't come without those 2 things, and that's why you can select networking as your main criteria. For sure.
Well, that you're absolutely right, and Cleo, we're going to have to get Cleo to jump in here on some of these dialogues because he's got all these great one-liners. But I love one that Cleo always says. He says, you don't just fall into these seats of leadership. People have worked hard. They've developed networks to create those opportunities. We're sitting here and we've talked a lot about Zig Ziglar, and I'm a little jealous that Kari had that opportunity to share the stage with Zig. But I had the pleasure of working with Zig Ziglar's son, Tom Ziglar, who's on our board of directors. And this is what Tom says. He says, legacy. He said, everybody is going to leave a legacy, everybody. The question is, are you going to leave your legacy by design or by default? But you are going to leave a legacy. And I think the real challenge that we have is to find purpose, to find passion, to find needs and ways that we can help our fellow man, that we can provide economies. But in all of those actions, we are creating a legacy by design and not by default. So with that, I will, Kari, go to the next one, I believe.
I think that's the end of it. No.
Oh, are we to Q&A?
Oh. Showing pictures of ourselves there.
There you go. Yeah, you got everybody's contact information there. But at this time, I think that our goal to our hosts was to go ahead and open it up for any questions or comments or anything that somebody may have in terms of the best practice. I would tell you that when I was a young person, I was 23 years old. I had just left Texas Tech University. I moved to a city that I knew absolutely nobody. I need y'all to understand this. I moved to a city I knew nobody. But I always tell people the two smartest things that I did was, number one, I went through Leadership Wichita Falls. I went through the leadership program of our community. It immediately put me in touch with community leaders and community services and assets. The next thing that I did was I joined the largest civic club in the community. I said, what is the largest civic club? It was the Downtown Rotary Club. I joined the Downtown Rotary Club. So at age 23, I learned everything I could about my city. I learned where the resources were, who the playmakers are. And then I decided I would get in a service club where now I'm surrounded with the top professionals in our community. So at 23, I was able to move quickly and assimilate into a community. And I knew who had the answers when I didn't. And Kari talked about that a while ago. That's very important.
Awesome. Well, that is great. Thank you guys so much for that information. We are going to open up the chat feature right now for anybody who has questions. Also, I do know that we have a couple of people who called in. So what I can do is I can unmute the people who have called in just for a minute, and then if you have a question, you can kind of get it out there. Okay. And we are getting a couple of questions in here. So one question was, you mentioned work smarter, not harder. Can you give some more examples of that?
You want to go, Aaron? You need to.
Yeah. So, one of the things that I think that we have to do to become subject matter experts is we need to remain timely on trends and information. That's an example there of, our days are packed with responsibilities, family responsibilities, work responsibilities. That is an example of where Google alerts can bring information to you. So topics that I'm interested in, I use Google Alerts to bring that information to us. The other thing is, like on the social media platforms, like on LinkedIn, I would consider Cleo as somebody in a professional network, but also kind of a mentor. So what I would say is, like on LinkedIn, I always watch and I see, well, what does Cleo like? What does Cleo share? I've got other folks that I watch as well, because if I'm watching people that know lots of people, something tells me that there could be a trend there somewhere. So I'm always using technology to help me stay up to being able to spot trends quickly.
And I think what's smarter, working smarter, not harder, to me also means utilizing your network as much as you can without being annoying to them. So asking for help when you know that it's an area that you don't necessarily have, those similar skill sets. So when you need help, ask for help, and that network is going to serve you well.
Mhm. Awesome. That's awesome. We did have a comment. Somebody said, I love the Abraham Lincoln quote. And then we have another question for Kari. I am also in the chat. I'm going to put the survey. We have a survey link that helps us kind of make sure that we're covering the information that's helpful, helps us in formulating these. So if you can open your chat and take that survey, that would be great. But this question is, Kari, you talked about building relationships and reaching out to 50 people with the hopes of establishing 10. How did you make that initial contact? Emails?
Yeah, so it depends is the answer. So depending on the type of relationship I was trying to reach, again, I would do emails. I always try to get a phone contact some way or another through my network. I'm always striving to get a full contact list of phone number, text messaging, and email. So I usually alternate. But initially, most likely I would have emailed, or if I was at an event, I would have reached out personally and introduced myself and given them my card or just chatted with them.
I'm going to jump on here if I can. Cleo put one in here for someone who may be new to networking and a bit fearful. What advice would you offer to get out there? It's a lot like life. You're going to have to be a little bit vulnerable, but you're also going to have to be a little bit courageous. And I would say that the one thing that I believe that just by being on this call, you've already demonstrated is that you have some focus, that you have some want to. And I'm sure there's a more sophisticated term for that than this old Texas boy, but I call it want to. And you got to have some want to. I was talking to one of my mentors this morning. He was telling me about a young man during the Great Depression that was going to try to apply for a copy job at the newspaper. And this was a very young man. I'm talking in his teens. And he overslept to get to the interview process. And when he got there, there was a line of 16 people waiting in line to get in to do the interview. And he quickly pulled out a piece of paper and he wrote a note on it and he gave it to, there was an assistant there and said, would you mind running this in to the manager that's making this decision? And they did. And about that time, finally, they ran through all of these people and finally got to this young man. And he said, the manager looked at him and said, are you the one that sent me this note? And he said, yes, sir, I am. And he said, I just want you to know that you got the job. Here's what the note said. The guy got there late, but he wanted the job. He wanted the opportunity. He had to be clever. He had to be innovative. He sent the note up there that says, please don't make a decision until you and I have a chance to talk. The rest is history. I would just tell you that, I believe that God makes no flops. He sponsors no junk. We were all designed and created for greatness. I would say take a deep breath, recognize how unique and special that you are. And I would walk in there and say, today, this is my opportunity. And I'm going to get to know somebody that makes me better. And by accomplishing those small tasks, by the way, success begets success. As Kari just demonstrated, 10 people has now grown into her incredible career just by going after 10 at a time. Success begets success. So be bold because there's nobody like you.
That's right.
Awesome. Kari, were you going to add something?
No, I was just going to back up to, emailing. I actually, in my career type business relationships that I try to build, I use LinkedIn a lot as a first connecting source. So just wanted to add that.
Mm-hmm. And that actually leads right into another question that we have in the chat, which is, what is the best advice would you recommend to connecting with someone you don't know or for building your network on LinkedIn?
Yeah, so I think I'd use that same strategy, studying, the industry you're trying to connect with, the people you're trying to connect with, really know them from what they're doing on LinkedIn or, other social media type sources, and be able to relate to them, understand the company that they're working with and the trends that they're suggesting they're going towards, and then reach out as best as you can and as specific to what you're asking them. So they like CEOs and decision makers like you to be very specific and direct. And so as direct as you can be to introduce yourself and why you're reaching out to them. They want a reason to connect with you.
I don't want to rehash anything that your professors, teachers, and colleagues and others that probably have given, but I will throw these out. Know what B2B is. Know what P2P is. Know what when you hear the term B2B, you need to know that that's business to business or brand to brand, because I love co-branding, by the way. So either B2B is business to business, brand to brand. P2P is professional to professional. And that is the beauty of the LinkedIn platform. The LinkedIn platform is an incredible B2B platform, and it's also an incredible P2P platform. So I do appreciate that both Kari, Cleo, and others are very active, and you can gain a lot of insight by watching what other professionals are doing.
Yeah, that's great advice. I know from a personal perspective, as the director of the Career Center here, I get a lot of connection requests on LinkedIn, and if there's no note and I don't have any idea why you want to connect with me, then it's really easy for me to say ignore. So even if there's a little note that just says, "Hey, I want to connect with you for this reason," for me, that's crucial to be able to kind of forge that relationship. So that's great advice.
Is that Stacy that's talking?
It is, yes.
Hey, Stacy, so one quick thing. Back in 2008, I had my first intern at the Texas FFA Foundation. That young man went on to have an incredible career, became an officer in the military. He's written 2 best-selling books. But one of the things that I'll never forget that he told me, because even back in the day, we were telling them, you've got to build your brand, you've got to build your network, you got to build your reach. He applied for a job, and I want to say it might have been with Caterpillar, but I remember that when he applied for the job, he did not submit a resume. He submitted his LinkedIn account. And his LinkedIn account, they evaluated that, and that became the resume for his job interview.
That's awesome. It's certainly it's a powerful tool. That is for sure. Does not look like we have. Well, no, we have one more question here. What is one networking tip that has been a secret to your business success?
Well, for me, it's an easy one. I don't say a lot when I'm trying to build my network. So even though I told you all these things that I do, I sit and listen and understand what the pain points are if I'm trying to build a business relationship or trying to listen to understand more about that person. I always am asking one question, and then I close my mouth and I listen with both ears, and I try to pay attention, and I don't try to think about what I'm going to say next, but I'm always trying to really, truly actively listen to what that person is saying, and building that trusting relationship right from the get-go. Key to building a strong network that you have access to pretty much anytime.
I would actually piggyback on that. Kari and I talked about this the other day. We put our teachers through a pretty intense leadership training. The first thing that they see when they open up their notebook is the word question. And I always ask the teachers, what's the root word of the word question? And the root word is quest, to go on an adventure. So any chance that you get to go on an adventure, ask people questions. When it comes to the networking tip, I would agree with Kari. I believe that that's it. It is okay. I will tell you at age 23, when I knew absolutely nobody, it is okay not to know everything. It is not okay not to ask. So the way you start that process of empowering yourself, by the way, success begets success. Start by asking questions.
Absolutely. Do we have time for a quick little story on asking questions and listening?
You bet, for sure.
So I was new to this. I told you guys about the business Beck Ag. I really didn't understand all of the agriculture, like on the crops and the machinery side of the business. I knew and understood the livestock side, but I was fortunate enough to meet the president of a company called Gearinghoff, which is a machinery company. Built a relationship with him virtually, and then he asked me to come up and meet with his whole team. This team was a German company, and 90% of them were German men that had flown over from Germany to meet in their US headquarters. So it was me and 12 mostly German guys at a table, and they asked me to come and tell them about what Beck Egg could do for their company. And again, I didn't have much knowledge yet. Yet is the key statement there about the machinery world and the corn and soybean space. But I was good at asking questions and listening. So I got up and I did a 15-minute presentation about the company Beck Egg. Went well. And then I started to ask questions. I asked one question and I listened. And then I asked another question and I listened. And it took almost 2 hours. So I had a 15-minute presentation and another hour and 45 minutes of asking questions and listening. It went really well. Everybody seemed to be pretty happy, but they were German men who didn't show a lot of expression. So I wasn't really sure where I stood at the end. And then I was driving back home, and the president, who I had created this relationship to get into that meeting with, called me up and he said, "Kari, you did a fantastic job. Everyone was so impressed with all of your knowledge and your expertise about the industry and what you knew that they decided to hire me." And I say this because I didn't know very much at all, but because I asked questions and listened and was able to ask the right next question because I was actively listening, I got the business, and they were a longtime customer of our company. So it's been a good story to tell about, asking questions and listening, how important it is. I didn't know a lot.
Absolutely. What a powerful story. Powerful story to end on. Doesn't look like we have any additional questions, but I do just really want to personally thank both of you for sharing your expertise with us today. Cleo, if you're still on the line, do you have any closing thoughts for us?
Yes, I'm still on the line. Stacey, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to compliment both Kari and Aaron for a treasure trove of information and insights over their vast experience and expertise. They're both dynamic people, very successful, but the wonderful thing that they're servant leaders and they're willing to give what they know, and they're continuous learners. So thank you guys. We really, truly appreciate what you provided today, and I've enjoyed it tremendously. Thank you so much for participating in a professional development series. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Cleo.
Thanks, everybody. Before you log off, if you can complete the survey in the chat, we would really appreciate it. But otherwise, thanks so much for joining us.